Okay, I'm shooting this video with the aim in mind of sort of laying out what we're going to do the rest of the semester and how I'm going to change things. I had originally planned on reading very specifically parts of Spinoza's Ethics with you and helping you learn how to read it. And I realized as I was going to shoot video time after time, it just isn't going to work this way. I need to have feedback and discussion, conversation with you all in order to help you to read Spinoza really carefully. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to really focus on helping you to write your final papers. Remember, you've got to write your rules to live by paper. And the way I'm going to help you to write this paper is first to kind of couch it in a big picture, sort of help you to understand why I'm asking you to do this and what the point of this paper is. And then I'm going to show you how Spinoza, and then I'm going to bring in a few other philosophers to help, how Spinoza can help you, how Heidegger can help you. We're going to talk a little bit about Plato. We're going to talk about a guy named Epictetus, an old Roman philosopher. We'll throw in some Nietzsche. We might use a little more of Kant. And all of this is just going to be with the aim of focusing on helping you write your paper. So I'm not going to have a lot of quizzes. I'm not going to have a lot of other assignments. I am going to have you turning in some drafts of different sections of your papers because ultimately your final grade is going to be based on your papers. So what I want to do is just to help you as efficiently as I can to write a paper that will be useful to you and will allow you to get a fair grade in this class. So I'm going to quickly just review a few key ideas that we've covered so far with the aim of helping you to think about your paper in a kind of big picture way. And then I'm going to talk more specifically about Spinoza Part 2 and Part 3, Part 4 and Part 5. And as I'm doing that, I will also throw in kind of a survey of all kinds of other philosophical ideas as I think they're appropriate. So I will refer to specific parts of Spinoza's Ethics, but I'm also not going to sit down in a detailed step-by-step fashion teach you how to read it. It's just not going to happen with the way that COVID-19 has changed how I can teach. And in order to do Spinoza justice and do it very well, I feel like I need to be able to talk with you, to interact face-to-face. And that's just not going to be feasible with the changes that have come. So let's review just a little bit, though. What I wanted you to really pay attention to in Being in Time, one of the things I wanted you to really get out of that is that Heidegger mentions this, and it's kind of an aside. He doesn't talk about it a lot, but it's really important to understand. Heidegger claims that we can become master of our moods. He says one can, should, and must become a master of one's moods. Now remember, moods is this terrible word, it's Befindlichkeit. And remember now what Befindlichkeit is a reference to the notion that you and I, we are being in the world in ways that other things are not being in the world. For instance, when I'm driving my car, I am in the car very differently than my steering wheel is in the car. The steering wheel is one thing inside another, but Dasein, or you and I'm in the car in an existential way. I experience being there. And the way that I experience being there is with a Befindlichkeit. That mood or Befindlichkeit shapes how I see everything in my environment. And I care for my world, right? That's what I am. So you can't think of yourself, if you've read Heidegger carefully, you can't think of yourself as this thing inside another thing called the world. That's not how it works. You are your world. And you carry the world in the way of a Befindlichkeit. That is the way you and I get through life. We live through our moods. We are our moods. And as our moods come and go up and down, we are up and down, up and down. Our world is up and down, up and down. Our moods are us. And when you are in they mode, you are the they, then your mood is entirely at the mercy of external forces, of them, right? It's just a way of saying in general, you're not yourself. You're not your own. The self that you are, the Befindlichkeit that you experience, is theirs. And you will experience yourself sometimes in total control and sometimes out of control. And you don't really notice what's the trigger. You just suddenly lose control. And oftentimes these will show up in what we call emotions. And so we're going to talk a lot about emotions with Spinoza, or affects. But remember, we are being in the world, unlike things that are present at hand. We do it with existence. And we are being alongside other Dasein. That's called Mitdasein, right? And there are two fundamental ways that you can be in the world alongside others. You can leap ahead, and when you leap ahead, two important things. You exercise consideration and you exercise forbearance. These are very important things. Now, when you're in a bad mood, when you're in a foul mood, when you're upset or angry or frustrated or hurried or rushed, when you're easily annoyed, it's very hard to feel like being considerate or forbearing. You just don't have that kind of patience. When, however, you are the master of your moods, then things like anger and frustration, they don't prevent you from having consideration or forbearance. Another way to think of that is, in being alongside others, the most important thing to keep in mind is that others have a world of their own, and you should be trying to give that world back to them, to clear space for them to make choices of their own. That is, to help them to be free to own their own life. This requires consideration and forbearance. When you are trying to take over someone's life, take their care for them, then you're leaping in. You're taking it over for them. You're telling them what to do. You know how they should be living their life. Blah, 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 blah. This is all they need. That's leaping in. You may be totally right that this is what they all need to be doing, but you're not exercising consideration or forbearance of being alongside them in the world together, sharing your world and giving them freedom. You're taking freedom from them or care, right? So we might ask, why is it so hard to exercise consideration and forbearance? And in my mind, an ethical person in Reading, Being, and Time is someone who learns how to master their moods such that they can exercise consideration and forbearance in their relationship to others. This tells us something about how to live towards others. Now, how I live towards myself requires another set of skills. So, how do we master our moods? The thing that gets in our way is our Befindlichkeit. We don't feel like it. We don't see it. We don't appreciate the worlds of other people. And we don't leap ahead. We leap in, right? So why is it so hard? Well, because we exist in our worlds with a Befindlichkeit that is not our own. It's theirs, right? We are the they. And we are falling into their world with idle talk, curiosity, ambiguity. It's easy, it's tranquilizing, it's tempting, it's alienating. All of those things, they make us not ourselves. And we then become slaves to our moods. Our moods control us. And they control how we interact with others. So what is the way out? Well, according to Heidegger, it's recognizing death. That is taking risks and finding something that you can skillfully practice. Now that has to do with you, but what's the way out with respect to other people? Well, you have to learn how to become a master of your mood so that you can practice considerateness and forbearance, so that you can leap ahead, clear space to allow others the same freedom and to exercise that considerateness and forbearance. So now we're going to turn to Spinoza. And what Spinoza is going to do is help us to understand moods in a different sort of way. But to quickly review, Heidegger said to become master of your moods, you can do so. One can, must, should, and must become master of one's moods through knowledge and will. That's what he thought would do it, knowledge and will. I'm going to adapt that. We're going to say you need to know, you need to understand your moods. That you can't master them without understanding. And second, gain skills. Now, will, that's a harder concept for us to worry about. So I'm just going to worry about knowledge and skill. So what Spinoza is going to do for us is help us to learn to gain knowledge of our moods and to practice gaining skills and how to become master of our moods or master of our being in the world. This is called authenticity, right? You get to choose how you are in the world alongside others. Now, I hope that what you will see is you will want to choose to be considerate and to practice patience or forbearance as part of your ethical practices. But you'll get to decide that. But you first have to know and then develop skills in dealing with Befindlichkeit. So, what Spinoza has given us so far is a discussion of who we are in terms of infinity. We are modes of infinity. And infinity is all that is. And his word for that is God. So we are modes of God. All things are modes of God. God is that which is the indivisible whole. It is the all. It is the absolute infinity of all infinities. You and I are simply ways of infinity moving. And because we move this way or that way, our way of moving is finite. It's finite dependent on the way we are moving. Now, we like to think of ourselves as this thing that is the same from birth to death, but that is not the case. And understanding Heidegger's notion of the self, you should know that you are a world, and that world changes all the time, and your way of being in the world is your mood that goes through the world. So it is not just this thing that is me. It is my environment and all that I share my environment with. For instance, right now, though it's very difficult because this is asynchronous, so I don't get feedback from you. But in my mind, you are here with me. You are a part of this world that I share. In fact, I wouldn't be doing this without you. And it already predisposes me or moves me, motivates me with a certain kind of Befindlichkeit, right? And so my world is being shared with you. And therefore, I am not simply an independently existing thing. You are part of me, I am part of you. For Spinoza, that's just the way it is too, right? We are our way of being in the world. And so when I am moving in this way, that is me. So let's just say that in this way I am angry. I'm not just I am angry. I am anger. Anger is that which is me when that is my Befindlichkeit, right? When I am love, that's what I am also. I am love. I am not Hiram who sometimes feels this way, sometimes feels that way. I am whatever Befindlichkeit is dominant in my existence. And that's my way of being. So in part one, it's all about this notion of infinity and that we are all interconnected. I gave you the 8 things you should know. I'm going to move on to part 2 really quickly. Now in part 2, Spinoza articulates what it is to have a human mind. There's a whole lot of wonderful stuff going on there, but I'm only going to emphasize this. There are 4 kinds of knowledge. These 4 kinds of knowledge will help us to understand ethical knowledge. But they apply to all kinds of knowledge. It's a general epistemological statement. There are 4 ways of knowing. The first is inconstant experience. Here, I'm going to give you this. Okay, can you see all that? Inconstant experience. That is just the way we mostly learn everything. Things happen here, they happen there. We start putting things together. We make connections. We try to find patterns in life. That's inconstant experience. There's really no rhyme or reason to our way of knowing. We just think we know things. This is the they, thoroughly the they. Knowledge of inconstant experience. Second kind of knowledge is by signs and language. Here, this is where we start learning things and having reasons for our understanding. But they're not reasons that come necessarily from our own experience. They're just reasons that we have received some proof from somebody else, right? Mathematics might be this for many people. You can do mathematical stuff because it's how you were taught. You maybe haven't thought it through yourself and thoroughly understood the principles on your own through your own experience, but you take others' words for it and you have good reason for accepting those things. It's not like inconstant experience where you might take other people's word for it, but it's unthought through. It's relatively superficial. The second kind of knowledge, or knowledge from science and from learning, is knowledge that you have with some good evidence for it. It's fairly solid. The third kind of knowledge is knowledge through reason and practical experience. Here, you have learned the principles for why something is the way it is through your experience and through proofs that you have satisfied through reason. Knowledge of this third kind is the highest kind of knowledge that we mostly live with. It's knowledge through reason and through reasoned experience. The fourth kind of knowledge Spinoza calls intuitive knowledge. And by this, I'm not exactly sure what he means. Later on, he compares it to knowledge we receive directly from God, something like a revelatory experience, where you just know that something is true and you know that it's true. It's just clear. You understand it and you know that it's the case. So these 4 kinds of knowledge will help us to understand ethics. Okay, so there's knowledge from inconstant experience. How do we know right from wrong? Why do we choose this instead of that? Why do we move in this way rather than that way? Why do we do this instead of that? Most of the time it's because of inconstant experience. the ways we get rewarded or blamed, praised and blamed for things, right? The second kind of knowledge would be because we have taken an ethics course and somebody told you this is what's right and this is what's wrong and here's why and here's not. Maybe reading Kant would be a good example of, where we might get an idea of duty for duty's sake and we're told this is always what is moral and reasons 1, 2, and 3 are not moral, but reason 4 is moral, right? Remember Kant there. The third kind of knowledge would be we have thought through our principles ourselves and have decided based on principles of reason and consistency that right is these sorts of things and wrong is these sorts of things. And we have good logical reasoning to support our assertions. The fourth in ethics here would just be you just receive direct revelation, intuition, intelligence straight from the infinite source of all knowing, all knowledge, God. So those are the 4 kinds of knowledge. So what I wanted to cover for you today, I'm going to quickly review. Just some basic reminder of Befindlichkeit. Now I hope that when you think about what kind of person you want to be, that you will think not in terms of, I want to be a doctor who makes $500,000 a year, who lives in a mansion and has a vacation home in Florida and drives around in a Porsche or a Mercedes or whatever your dream is, right? That's not. The circumstances of your life do not make you right or wrong. They do not make you a good person or a bad person. What I want you to think in terms of is, how is being a good person about being able to skillfully master your moods? If being a good person is about interacting well with others in a calm and rational and kind, gentle kind of way, in ways that are good for others, in ways that promote the well-being of others, in Kant's terms, in ways that have goodwill. If you want to have goodwill towards others, how do you do that other than through becoming a master of your Befindlichkeit or your moods, right? To be able to choose goodwill, to choose to exercise considerateness and forbearance, for instance. To do so when you choose to, as you choose to, skillfully, this would be a good person, no matter how much money you make. Whether you're a trash collector or a spine surgeon, whether you're the president of the United States or a street sweeper in India, it would be irrelevant. Those circumstances wouldn't matter. What would matter is whether you have goodwill, and that is kindness, charity, desire for the well-being of others, right? Leaping ahead, as Heidegger might say. I hope that you will think of that in terms of what it means to be a good person, to be able to choose and own your Befindlichkeit, your mood. The other things we've talked about then are how knowledge is basically 4 kinds for Spinoza. Again, in constant experience, knowledge from being taught signs and language, 3, knowledge from reason, and 4th, knowledge straight from God, intuition. All right, I'm going to shoot another video that's going to talk more specifically about part 3 of Spinoza's ethics. So I'm going to touch a little bit more on part 2, because there's some discussion about what it is to be a self there that will matter for part 3. But then we're going to move on to part 3, and I'm going to spend most of this week in part 3 and part 4 and part 5. And I'm going to bring up some other philosophers too, and I'm going to try to make this sort of a survey into the world of other philosophers who are concerned about this same sort of issue, that is, how do you master your being in the world, your experience of living being you? All right, talk to you in a minute.